Hello there everyone, this is Crits back at it with another video, and today I'm going to cover whether or not I regret pulling for C6 Tartaglia. Now, if you don't know yet about me, I am a free-to-play / low-spending player, so at most I will buy a couple Welkin Moons here and there. I have purchased battle passes in the past for the weapons out of them, but I haven't really done that in a long time now, and I also don't plan on doing that. And so pulling for C6 Child was quite difficult for me. So because I didn't really have the financial resources to just spend them on getting constellations for a character in Genshin, and I just basically had to save for a very, very long time. I had to save everything I got from multiple Welkin Moon passes, everything from every event, 36-star Abyss on every single rotation, etc, etc. You know the drill. If you've been a free-to-play or low-spending player before, or still are, then you probably know what I'm talking about. And still, I chose a character that most people would agree doesn't have the best constellations necessarily. So like his C1, I would probably say it's one of the most useful ones that he has, because those 20%, they might not seem that much, but you actually do feel the difference, I have to say. His C2 really is one of his most useless in my personal opinion, because in the situations where you want to be using him, he doesn't have any problems filling up his energy anyway, because he's going to be killing so many enemies anyway. So this one, not that great, and I was pretty pissed when I was basically just stuck on this one for over a year before his next rerun came. Of course, C3, C5, obviously his biggest increases in personal damage, because the others just don't do that much for him in that regard. His C4, it's a rather controversial one. I personally don't believe it's as bad as many people will make you believe it is. It's not that problematic, and it does add a pretty decent chunk of damage to his AoE damage overall. And his C6, of course, is considered to be one of the worst C6 constellations in the game, especially considering 5-star characters. So I could have easily gone for another character like Eula instead, who just has tons of utility in damage regards in her constellations. She gets physical damage bonus. She gets cooldown reduction on her E. She gets more damage on her Lightfall Sword. And then, of course, her C6 enables her to gain much more stacks on her burst, which is very important for her. So, Eula, arguably much better constellations overall. And even Xiao, who has pretty weak constellations before C6, has arguably one of the stronger C6 constellations in the game. It's just not really safe to say if the others are worth it in the long run, because his C6 is great, but the others really aren't that great. But even he would probably have been a better candidate for C6ing him if I was going just for personal damage of the character that I was going for. So, do I regret it? I have to say, absolutely not. And I'm going to tell you why, and maybe that will help you decide if you want to go for any C6 character in the future. So, as I already said, damage-wise, this constellation doesn't really do that much for this boy, right? So, just get this dude down real quick, so that we will have some damage showcase here. Like, you can see, he definitely does more damage than he does without his constellations. In this case, mostly because of C3 and C5. Then, of course, there's the additional ticks from his C4. But overall, not that great in terms of damage. What it does, though, is that his C6 does enable some new playstyles for this character. And that is what I was mostly interested in, because this is my favorite character in the entire game. He's the only one that I see 6th, and he's probably going to stay the only one that I see 6th in the foreseeable future. So why did I pull for it? Just because I love him, and because I wanted to get the most out of him that I possibly could. And what this allows me to do now, having him at Constellation 6, in this particular case, is just, yeah, it's a rather minor quality of life change, because you already have a C1 that reduces his cooldown by 20%. So in most cases, if you play him properly, then you won't even notice his cooldown at all through proper rotations. And yeah, it's basically a non-issue at C0 as well, but especially if you have C1. His C6 can even be considered suboptimal because you rather want to play him with his ranged burst anyway in most scenarios, but that's exactly what I am going at. C6 enables me to basically have more uses for his melee burst, which I really love using, and using it also enables me to keep him on field longer, and therefore I can now use him in more teams. So, for example, I can play him in one of my favorite teams I play with him now. I put him with Mona and then a cryo unit like Layla, or also Rosaria works fine. Kaya is another great candidate for that because he works also really well in a child freeze team. And then I put Kazuha with him for, of course, swirling and applying additional cryo. And that is an insanely strong cryo freeze team for a child, actually. And of course, you can also play that with C0 or C1 child. There's nothing keeping you from that. But what I'm saying is just that it's much easier and much more reliable with C6 child. So I can keep applying Hydro for longer. I can use his melee burst in order to get the most damage out of his burst, even in a non-vaporized team. And yeah, what I'm just saying is that getting a C6 has given me not that big of a boost in damage, which was around 20% on his normal attacks in his melee stance, and around 14 to 20% more burst damage. That is not that much, considering that other 5-star characters get so much more damage boost through their constellations, especially like Raiden Shogun. I could have wished for Raiden Shogun's C2 or C3 in that time, but I didn't because, well, I don't like playing her that much. And another aspect that I want to mention is the damage increase actually does feel great in the beginning, but it really quickly, in my personal opinion, gets to the point where it gets normalized for you. So in the beginning, you'll be sitting there and saying, oh wow, my Hu Tao is suddenly doing like 90k charge attacks or something, right? That's basically what you would be pulling for if you were going for Hu Tao constellations. Of course, she also has some constellations that give her new kinds of playing her. Her CZ1 is an immense quality of life improvement. But overall, your Hu Tao will still pretty much play the same, except, well, she'll be doing higher numbers. For Child, it's rather the opposite. He won't be doing that much more damage, but, for example, I can go around and just don't worry about cooldowns at all, basically. And just use his melee burst, and I have no more cooldown. That is not that big of an advantage. I'm completely with everyone saying that. It doesn't increase your DPS by all that much, but it's fun. And that's what I would recommend to anyone that is considering pulling for C6s or any constellations at all on 5-star characters. Just think about, would it actually increase the fun that you are having with the character? Because, for example, for Xiao, yeah, I could be going for more constellations, and I would actually say his C6 is one that I would really like to go for at some point. But then again, the other constellations are just not that worth it. I don't like Xiao personally enough in order to justify saving up for that long, skipping so many characters again. Because for Child, I had to skip like Yelan, I had to skip Ayato, I had to skip Ayaka's rerun, everything. I had to stay strong for so long just because I wanted this C6. And it was worth it to me just because of how much I love playing him. So the advice I would personally give to you is do not pull for 5-star constellations for the damage, because you will get used to it and it won't seem that special to you anymore, right? With those 90k Hu Tao charge attacks or something. Yeah, in the beginning it will feel great, but sooner or later you'll be seeing that just as the normal case, and you'll be rather negatively impacted by it, or you might be, whenever, well, you have a character that doesn't do that damage, and you'll just be wondering, oh no, how do I not do this damage anymore? That should be normal. But when it actually changes the playstyle of a character or the possibilities you have with that character, then you will have a longer lasting satisfaction that you gain from Constellations, in my personal opinion. You might think differently, and that's completely fine. Let me know in the comments below. Have you ever pulled for Constellations of a 5-star character? Have you C6'd any 5-star character in the past? Do you play any of those? And how was your experience with this? Let me know, and I hope to see you soon in my next video. This is Crits. I'll be back soon enough.